Thank you guys for having me today. I also am going to begin with a little bit of thanks for the people that helped with this project. Initially, we came out to talk about this. It was the Buildings and Grounds Committee that met so that we could start to begin to discuss, are there going to be any impacts to the site out here if we, when they begin the construction. And the people that are on the Buildings and Grounds Committee were instrumental in helping, including Lisa Schumann, Marty Edwards, Eric Bragg, who else is on Buildings and Grounds, Harold Schwanbach, Josh Ziegler, but he's been called away for work today, and Alan too. Also want to thank Carolyn Metros, who is a friend of mine who came out to help, Jessica Slaymaker. My children actually did some archaeological work out here with me since we were doing this, trying to keep, trying to do this pro bono. I employed a lot of my friends to come out and help. I also would like to thank Gil Ziegler and Patsy Ziegler. Gil came out and actually helped me by doing some metal detecting survey out here, and we'll discuss that in a little bit, what we found. When I initially met with, I always say we because I usually work for a company when I do this. When I initially met with the Buildings and Grounds Committee, Norman Turner was also somebody that came out, and he brought maps, and we sat down trying to determine where to place this pavilion. Of course, you want to make sure that it's in a location that is going to be accessible for everybody to use, but you also know that there's going to be things here in the ground that you might disturb. Anywhere you stick a shovel out here pretty much is going to be an archaeological site. You just don't want to disturb something that is of significance. The silt filature would be one of those places that we would not want to disturb unless it was absolutely necessary. An archaeologist's job is not to stop development, not to stop people from doing what they want to do with their property. We are trying to just get information and present it to you before it's lost. Because once you dig in the ground, you're basically destroying a site. And so these artifacts belong to the Salzburger Society. An archaeologist won't keep them unless you want us to store them in a place that is protected and that you would have access to. But you have this here, you have your museum, you have the parsonage, you have the ability to store these artifacts and present them and let people see the heritage that's here. So with that in mind, when we come out to do archaeology, we're not going to dig up the entire site if we can help it. This is our site here where the pavilion is going. What we're doing is we're trying to see where are they actually going to impact this ground? Where are they going to actually disturb the artifacts? And those would be, in this particular place, the corners of this pavilion and along the edge where they're actually going to form the concrete. They have the little forms, the wooden forms that they dig down a little bit into the dirt and then pour the foundation. Everything that is under concrete is actually preserved. What we were doing is just where they're going to actually put in foundational work and dig into the ground is where we dug. So 4 corners, a shovel test here. So there were 7 shovel tests in all. And guess what, guys? I found 262 artifacts in the ground in situ here in just those 7 shovel tests. I know. It's pretty amazing. I had a feeling we were trying to place a pavilion in a roadway. But there were 2 surveyors, one in 1977, his name was, I believe, Whiteman, and another surveyor in 86, Wilder, had come out here and previously surveyed this property. And they used the maps that were originally created to try to place the current location of buildings overlaying the original town placement here. What we found when there was a 1986 to 89 archaeological excavations is that those survey maps were off on both the east and north axis. So about 9 meters off to the north and 3 meters to the east. And that does not seem like a lot, but when you're trying to locate buildings out here and small features, that's a kind of a big discrepancy. So that's why you need archaeological surveys to ground truth what the maps are showing, and also for the maps to then ground truth the archaeology. It kind of works hand in hand that way. But what we discovered when we did the shovel testing is that we actually, right here, they actually removed a tree. So that was already, that was disturbed. We didn't really get much. We got a little bit out of there. But over here in this portion of the pavilion was actually a house site. A chimney fall was where pretty much that pillar is, and the pillar to the northwest was a trash pit. So we know that there was a house there. Also, in this shovel test here, there was a house foundation. When we went back and started analyzing the artifacts, we want to see what time period that we're looking at, because that's going to tell us how long they were here. Is it going to make, basically archaeology works hand in hand as a handmaid into history, but it can also provide more insight into the history here, such as things like pipe stems. There is no history of smoking by the Salzburgers in your documentation, yet in the archaeological excavations back in the 80s, and also in this particular archaeology that we did here, we did find pipe stems. So we know that they were smoking. This is a replica of the pipe stem that although this is more of the English version, that's a little more, it's fancy. But what we find is when they're smoking a pipe, they're breaking off pieces as it gets very soft, because it's made out of kaolin clay. And that's why you find all those little pieces of broken pipe out on a project area. And there were some really, really smart archaeologists that came along, and they discovered that you could do a mathematical formula if you used out of your old toolbox drills. And they actually can put a drill bit in the end of this and use a formula to find out how old a pipe is by using the different diameters of drill bits. And the older the pipe, the smaller the hole is. So we can actually date a site based on pipes. Just something weird and interesting that I thought you guys might enjoy. Also, we know that the Salzburgers could not have any hard liquor here, but what they were tasked with doing is wine production and silk production. So we do find wine bottles. This is an example of a really nice one that came out of a actual, when Gil and I were actually out here doing some metal detector hit, there was a huge metal detector just was going crazy in this area right here under the pavilion, especially right in this spot right here. And so I said, wait, don't touch it anymore. I'm going to actually open this up a little bit bigger. This is going to be, a little bit of a larger hole. Let's see what's here. And sure enough, we actually hit a large feature in that particular shovel test. And this is one of the things that came out. This is a wine bottle. They use them for not just storage of wine, but they use them, we know, They stored all sorts of things. They were just a very utilitarian, wonderful thing. The color of wine bottles is actually interesting because it was also used a lighter color as a pharmaceutical bottle because they thought that the color would protect the things that were in the bottles. So that's why that's why it's that green color, that dark color. Some of it's almost so dark that you have to hold it up to the light to see that it's actually green. The older the bottle, the larger the kick up. The kick up is the thing that's in the bottom, and that's where all the silties, tannins, and all that, whatever is in the wine settles around that kick up. That's what that's called, and that's why they put it there. That's why they make them with the little thing in the bottom, is to settle out all the stuff that's in the wine, so your wine tastes better. And the older the bottle, the higher, deeper the kick up is. So this is a really, really old bottle. I also found in that same shovel test the top of a bottle. I don't know if it goes with it. I don't think it does. It looks like it's a little bit of a difference in thickness and also in color. It was also found not as deep. So basically in archaeology, the deeper you go, the older things are. Kind of makes sense, right? So when you're digging and you find a 1986 penny at the bottom of your test pit, that's all below all your really wonderful artifacts that are from the 1700s, guess what that means? That means there's disturbance there. That means that your site is pretty disturbed. We did not find that here. This was an intact archaeological site. Really, really amazing archaeology here. I found lots of bricks. I found housewares, plates, scratch blue salt glazed stoneware, which is a really 1744 to 1775. So this is a beautiful. It's like they would actually throw salt into the kiln. That's why you have that pitted appearance on the outside of the ceramic. Also found, this is y'all are gonna love this piece because most of the pieces of there it goes. The archaeological remains are imported. Do it? Oh, I thought she was, okay. Most of the archaeological remains are imported, but you find this was actually a local production piece. I was actually able to mend it back together, and it is from a local potter and a local pottery. And you can see it's more of a unrefined earthenware is what we'd call it, and a really wonderful example of the craftsmanship and artistry that was going on here. It would be a creamware bowl. They would pick it up and use it probably for milk that was inside of it that they'd get from their cows here, which also we found cow bones, deer bones. The archaeology shows us what they were eating. This can enhance your own descriptions of what was out here and what they were doing. A lot of your artifacts are going to be building material like nails. Everything's dating around 1753, mean ceramic dating. That just means that when you take all the artifacts, you figure out the dates on them, you do a little math to come up with the mean ceramic middle of that time period, and you divide it out by the amount of artifacts. That's the date that you're getting, and that can tell us just that they were here in the time period that you think that they are here based on your historical records. So I also found a little bit of Native American pottery. I found something called Savannah cord-marked pottery that had not been found in the original excavations by Dan and Rita Elliott. They found a different type of pottery that was associated with the Ute Indians. It is a local type of pottery. It's just not one that they, I don't believe, had found out here. And so that was rather fascinating that was there. And we also know that the Salzburgers were not actually supposed to trade with the Native American Indians that were here. They were supposed to go through an Indian, a licensed Indian trader. We know that there, and correct me if you found any other evidence for this, because, you know, I'm basing this on some of the things that I've actually, you know, read and researched. They didn't have one here at Ebenezer. That doesn't mean that they didn't acquire some pottery, or that pottery was dropped out here. The Native American Indians were probably gone, I think, 1743, around that time period. 1750s, they were definitely not in the area, except for maybe up near Bethany. And then 1763, I believe, is when Georgia acquired the land that was in this area. If I'm wrong on my dates, let me know. But I believe that's correct. We also know that the artifacts that we're finding also suggest, because we're not finding any artifacts after a certain date, that after the American Revolution, the site was not here any longer. The war had basically disrupted life to such an extent that they moved on, and they scattered in the area. There is one piece of pottery that is kind of an outlier that we did find. It's called a piece of flow blue. That's made up until 1800 to 1850. So I'm kind of intrigued to know what that piece of pottery is doing out here. It's kind of a mystery right now, and I'm excited to see what that can tell us for the future. Obviously, the Salzburgers would still come back here. They would have events, and guess what? They might have broken a plate or something on this area. So that you have to think about too when you're doing archaeology. It's all the what ifs that can happen out here. So I just, you know, wanted to tell you again, thank you for letting me do the archaeology out here. I wish we'd had time to do excavated units, but of course that takes a lot more, you know, ability to, in time, but also it disturbs more of the ground, and that's not what we were going for here. We wanted to protect what was here and not disturb anything further. And I really thank you guys. Is there any questions that you might have for me? You are welcome to come up after this is over and look at the artifacts. I can talk to you further about them up here. And you know, thank you.